everyone, and welcome back to another Storytime video. And today I'm going to update my top 25 games of all time list because I now have 7 new games to add to it. Yes, I have 7 new games in my top 25 since I released the 2022 version of this back 15 months ago, last March. So, coming in at number 25 is the game in which I had gameplay of last time. Half-Life 2 Episode 2. And I really liked this episode. It was certainly longer than Episode 1. It sucks that we never got to see the conclusion to this episodic trilogy it was going to be. To kind of serve as a bridge because Gabe Newell wanted to avoid burnout at his company, or at Valve. So they were going to make 3 episodes that tell the story after Half-Life 2, and Episode 2 is longer than 1, and with the additions that they made to Episode 2, if Episode 2, I did say it back then, but if Episode 2 was as long as the base game, then I would almost say that Episode 2 would be higher than the original game, because it just adds more than what the original has. So if you were able to flesh that out even more, then yeah, I think I would have enjoyed Episode 2 more than the base version for that reason. But coming in at number 24 is Halo Reach. Now, Halo Reach, I loved the power-ups that you could have, and the missions themselves were pretty good. They were pretty good. I mean, there's no mission that I can think of that I would dread replaying. But part of the problem is that there's hardly any missions that just stand out to me like the other Halo games. And I will get to a mission that sticks out in my mind in the other Halo games when I get there. But I did love the team aspect of being part of a team and all that, but it just felt weird having Halo without Master Chief. ODST, which did make the list last year, suffered from the same thing that I just said with Reach, is that no Master Chief made it feel weird. But Reach got pushed down out of the top 25. It's now at 28, in case you're curious. But coming in at number 23 is BioShock Infinite. Now, using Vigors, I prefer using plasmids over Vigors, and I prefer the setting of Rapture to Columbia. Columbia is great, but I have been up 7,000 feet above sea level before, and I've been in airplanes in the clouds plenty of times before. And so I guess that's part of the reason why I prefer Rapture as a setting over Columbia. As, in case you don't know, Rapture being below the sea, kind of like an Atlantis, if you will, while Columbia is just a city in the sky. I think 20,000 feet up. Which, by the way, in case you're curious, Columbia is more likely to happen than Rapture, I think. Because people can live like 14,000 feet above sea level and definitely adapt to those environments. But there's at a certain point where the pressure of being below the water is going to crush you and kill you. But I could be wrong. I'm not I'm not a scientist after all, so. But I do think I know a good game when I see it. And speaking of good games, number 22, coming in at number 22 is Max Payne 3. The ending part of a really good, well, the Max Payne trilogy hit a good start and a good end. Max Payne 2, that weird middle child. It's like the BioShock trilogy as it stands right now. I've heard BioShock 4 is in development, but as it stands right now, the Max Payne trilogy is like the BioShock trilogy. Great starting point and great ending point, but the middle was not exactly that great. And Payne goes from New York to Brazil after he thought that he had retired from being a cop there in New York. And the story is told in a non-chronological order. I do not mind when games are told in a disjointed story. One of my favorite movies of all time, Pulp Fiction, is told in a disjointed storyline. The sequel to the background gameplay that you see, Hotline Miami 2, that game has a disjointed storyline. So I don't mind games with a disjointed storyline, but I think that it can either add to the coolness or confuse it, but it's really just kind of a dice roll. Whether it's going to confuse me a little bit or add to the experience. But Max Payne 3 is my favorite Max Payne. I have not changed anything except adding new games to this list. But coming in at number 21 is Doom 2016. Doom 2016 is really good, and I did play and rank 2016 before I'd played Doom Eternal, because I was worried that playing Doom Eternal would have soured my opinion on 2016, and looking back on it, it did, to where it's tougher to play 2016. But I've played 2016 more recently than I have Doom Eternal. And I do not change my opinion after I play the game too much. And by the way, too, I keep forgetting to mention at the top of this at the top of these lists. This does not include DLC or multiplayer if it is it does not include multiplayer as a game mode. It only focuses on the campaign, the single player campaign, and if you can play in a multiplayer sense, like in Portal 2, a game that just missed the list at 26. But if it's a game like Portal 2 where you can play a multiplayer campaign that's separate from the traditional campaign, then I will include that and it gets bonus points for that. But with games like Hotline Miami, where it doesn't really have DLC and doesn't have a multiplayer mode, it's just not fair to compare games like that because it's not an apples to apples comparison. And I always forget to mention that before I get into the list. Maybe one day I will actually remember that. But Doom 2016, I just wish that it had more environments, and it just felt like you could use the super shotgun or one or two other weapons throughout the whole campaign, and there wasn't a whole lot of variety. And the developers did address this for Doom Eternal. But as it stands, Doom 2016 comes in at number 21. Coming in at number 20 is Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 is, I think, the easiest, and it is also the longest Borderlands game, and it is the best one gameplay-wise. With villains, no. I think I said it before in previous, when I've done this list previously, but I prefer there to be no villains like in the first game than the ones that we got in the third game, Tyreen and Troy, but they kind of redeemed themselves later on in the game when we figured out their backstory in the game. But yeah, it's the longest in terms of gameplay. You get to explore different planets, aside from just being on Pandora. And it's the most polished in terms of gameplay. So based on all that, it is my favorite Borderlands game between the trilogy. I've not played the pre-sequel yet. Coming in at number 19 is Far Cry 4. Now, of course, you have all those memes about Ubisoft remaking the same game now for 11 years. That being Far Cry 3. But the thing is that I try to look at these very subjectively, in the sense that I try to look at them as their own game. Yeah, Far Cry 3 as a formula is a good formula. And people are going to hate that I'm saying it like this because it almost sounds like I'm rewarding Ubisoft for this. But there are far worse formulas they could have duplicated over and over and over and over again. But the thing is that I would much rather prefer Far Cry 2 done over and over again than Far Cry 3. But, you know, you gotta make it all mainstream for the normies out there in order to make it very appealing. But Pagan Min and the setting of Far Cry 4 is just so freaking awesome. Plus, you get to ride a freaking elephant! I love it. He gets to ride an elephant into battle. That's so awesome. But I am not going to continue to talk about Far Cry 3 Reskinned because I have more to talk about later on for that, so I'm not going to waste too much more time. Number 18 is Halo Combat Evolved. Halo Combat Evolved is great. It is terrific. Now, I love that you have a health bar system, and the story is great. Bungie made it so that you could. Well, Bungie was unsure whether Halo was going to perform the way that it did, because if you play just Combat Evolved, you realize that the game and the story could end with the game itself. But Combat Evolved has 9 perfect levels, and then the library. But that's kind of beside the point. Yeah, if they didn't have the library, then Combat Evolved would rank a little higher on my list. But the Warthog run at the end, and just seeing all these levels, like going onto the Halo ring for the first time, that is a moment in gaming that that is just so cool. The first time you see it, it is just so jaw-dropping that it just almost brings tears in my eyes, just me telling you this right now. But that moment is really cool. Number 17 is BioShock. Now, like I mentioned, I really like Rapture better than Columbia. And I like using not Vigorous. Yes, Plasmid's. Plasmid's better than the Vigors that you get in Infinite. And you get a final boss. When BioShock Infinite ended, during that big final encounter, I didn't think that was the big final encounter. I was just casually playing it one summer morning a couple of summers ago, and then all of a sudden, I get that final cutscene, and then credits. It's like, what? It's like, okay, I just finished it. I was having a good time playing it. I thought about putting it down and doing something else in the meantime and coming back to it later, not realizing that I was so close to finishing it. Not having a final boss does not break a game, in my opinion. Otherwise, BioShock Infinite wouldn't be as high as it is. But the thing is that when I play a game for X amount of hours, depending on how long the game is, I at least want an ending resolution, whether it be to that part of the story or the story overall. And so I just didn't necessarily have that in BioShock Infinite. Infinite does wrap up a story, and I will admit that, but it just feels a bit weird to not have a final encounter. But I'm not going to harp on this, or harp on that anymore. Coming in at number 16 is Far Cry 5. Now, this is where I'm going to talk about a lot of the Far Cry 3 reskin memes and jokes and all that stuff instead of wasting time during 4. I like Joseph Seed, and the Seeds. I'm hesitant to say more than Pagan Min. Because it was a little bit annoying that they had plot armor for several scenes where your character could just easily kill them. But I do like the fact that each one of them has a totally different backstory, and then you have Joseph, the leader of the cult. But Pagan Min you have on a spiritual level. You have that spiritual connection with him, and that means something to me. So, in some ways I like the Seeds better, and in other ways I like Pagan Min better. So it's hard for me to say which one I like more, but overall I like the gameplay more in 5, and the setting just a tiny bit better. Like 0.1 better. So if it was like on a 10, or so if it was like to a 10 scale, it would be like, I don't know, let's just say 9 for Far Cry 4 setting, and then 9.1 for Far Cry 5 setting. But the gameplay makes it just slightly better, in my opinion. And then, number 15, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Now, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is basically Far Cry 3 stripped of all the bad stuff that you had. But it was basically an 80s movie. Well, it was basically an 80s action movie with so many references. And it is such a treat to play through this 5 to 10 hour game. It is always such a treat to play through this. And I always have the best time while playing it. But I just wish it wasn't so easy, and I kind of wish you actually got to fight Sloane as a final boss instead of having it being a final cinematic. But it still comes in as number 15. And my second favorite Far Cry game. Coming in at number 14 is the first new game that I did not have on my list last time. It is Half-Life. Half-Life is so good. It did so much right, and I think that the enemy AI is better in the first game than it is the second game. Yes, I think the Combine's AI is sometimes very ridiculous. The military's AI and, well, the aliens' AI, and later on the military's AI, well, the military and the aliens' AI is just so good. And, yeah, going to Zen feels like just a bit of a downgrade compared to the rest of the game, but it doesn't necessarily overstay its welcome. And it is cool to see the world in which all of the aliens are coming from. It is cool to see that. Yes, it is really, really cool to see that. Number 13 is the gameplay that you've been watching for the last 25 minutes, Hotline Miami. Now, this game is really, really good. It has really good gameplay, feels great to play, and the music is just so cool. It is so freaking cool. Coming in at number 12 is Transformers Devastation. Again, the gameplay is really freaking good. I can't decide if I like Devastation soundtrack better or if I like Hotline Miami's. They are that good. But Devastation basically has the old Transformers 80s aesthetic. And I really love all those character models. And you even get to go to Cybertron. And the combat, oh my gosh, the combat just feels so good when you play it. It just feels amazing. Number 11 is Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 is universally among people's top games list, especially back when it came out in 2004. But there are 10 games that are better than this game that I've played in the past. But all the set pieces that you have, the new characters, the expansion upon the story in the first game, the 7-Year War, Dr. Breen rising to power, becoming the antagonist in this game. Oh, it's just so good. I thoroughly enjoy playing it every single minute that I am playing it. At number 10, we have, well, half of the top 10. Well, most of the top 10 are new games, by the way. 6 of the top 10 are new games. But coming in at number 10 is one of the new games. It is Bully Scholarship Edition. Bully is really, really good. And it is a Rockstar game, and it is like a teenage version of Grand Theft Auto. It is very satisfying to go through and reunite the cliques and become basically the leader of the school as you try to seek revenge against who you thought was your friend at first. And it's just really cool and has a satisfying end to it. And all the missions are so amazing, especially when you get to venture outside the school and go into the town of Bullworth. It is so amazing. And I think it's a very, very underrated game. And I think it's one that gets very underlooked, in my opinion. Coming in at number 9 is a game that has kind of sort of seen renewed interest this spring and summer. Resident Evil 4. The original, the 2005 version. Oh man, it is long, it is great. The story is terrific. And Ashley, despite the fact that in the remake feels less like a damsel in distress, it's not like Ashley is this big damsel of distress that needs to be rescued all the time in the original. It's just basically another health bar to manage, and a bigger health box in the original. And I don't know if I would like the remake more than the original or not. I have no idea. But I am good with the original for now. The original is just so good. Of course, otherwise I wouldn't have it at number 9. Sorry, my throat's getting dry. Coming in at number 8 is a game that was on my list last time. Halo 2. So good. There's so many quotable lines in this game, and the story is just so great. And what part of the reason makes the story so great is seeing the Arbiter side of it all. Seeing that side helps make the story so great. Because if you didn't have the Arbiter side, you would just have the Flood and being this... Well, if you didn't have Gravemind, you would just have the Flood be this zombie, this enemy zombie faction with no clear purpose or rhyme or reason to be there. But with the Arbiter there, given his story, that gives that definitely fleshes out the Covenant, and it makes me kind of like the Covenant, and doesn't really make me want to fight them. In terms of a lore and a story perspective, oh, it for sure makes me like the Covenant. But without that, I think the Flood and the Covenant would both seem cliche. But this game drags on a little bit, eventually, in the last few missions. But this game is just so good. And I might say that for every game in the top 10, but can you blame me? Coming in at number 7 is Far Cry 2, my favorite Far Cry game. The story is so great, with a civil war as you're tasked to kill the Jackal after you go to Africa. And it is just such an amazing story, including the twist toward the end. The twist, I kind of wish that they had executed the twist just a little bit better. But the weapon jamming mechanic, I wish more games would implement that. But one thing I didn't like about the game is the fact that they give you malaria. Why? Just because it's Africa doesn't mean you need to have malaria, Ubisoft. Again, I get that this is 15 years ago. But still, why, Ubisoft? Why? I mean, at least you didn't copy this game from another game. And that this felt original. Ubisoft 15 years ago definitely felt original. Coming in at number 6 is Fallout New Vegas. My favorite Fallout game of all time. And the story is just so great. The multiple endings is fantastic. People have been debating for the last 13 years which ending is canon. I've even had this debate with one of my classmates before, and I have discussed it a little bit in another Storytime video when I mentioned why I would not want a Fallout New Vegas 2. And the campaign just it gives you so many liberties with what you want to do. Oh, it It never tells you no, and it basically allows you to do anything you'd want, and it encourages any playstyle. And so it offers a ton of replay value that I cannot overlook. This game, back when I originally made this list back in 2021, was my favorite game of all time, and I think you guys can see why. Now we move into the top 5. Coming in at number 5 is Halo 3. Yes, Halo 3. Halo 3 doesn't have as many memorable dialogue lines as the second game, but it has bigger and better set pieces, and it does not necessarily drag on like the second game, and it adds to the arsenal, like weapons, enemies that you fight, vehicles, and it adds the power-ups that Reach carried over into its gameplay. And this was a terrific way to end the original Halo trilogy. With the final mission, the Arbiter fighting beside you, and the Warthog run that was so reminiscent of the first game. Nearly 10 perfect levels. The Gravemind level is, well, not the Gravemind level, but the second to last level where you go and retrieve Cortana. That level is nearly perfect too. There are so many enemy spawns in there that make it so that level is not perfect, but it would definitely get an A or an A+ in my opinion instead of an S. For that one level, the entire game, yes, S. Definitely all the way. Certified masterpiece. Another new game. Number 4, Batman Arkham Asylum. I love the combat. The story is great. And the Batman's performance, Joker's performance, basically all the villains are done in a terrific way that is just so fantastic. And stepping out onto the island for the first time is one of those moments that you definitely remember for the rest of your life in terms of gaming. That you just, it's just like I mentioned with Halo or with CE, where you go and you step on the Halo ring for the first time and you just soak it in, and it's one of those types of moments. It's like when you crash in BioShock and you see that beginning light tower, or in Fallout 3 when you exit the vault for the first time. Those are 4 moments that I can think of that just make you go, wow. And just make you stop for the next few minutes just to appreciate what you're looking at. Coming in at number 3 is Yakuza 0. Yakuza 0, the gameplay is really good. Well, it's pretty good. The story is the best video game story I have ever come across. If I ranked video games based on story alone, Yakuza 0 would be at the very top. And I can think of 1 or 2 things that come close, Maybe Halo 2, maybe Far Cry 2 come close to it, but Yakuza Zero's story is leagues and miles, is almost leagues and miles ahead of anything else that I've experienced in terms of gameplay. It has 14 or 15 chapters centering around two different characters where you play two chapters as one character and then you flip to the other. So you have one story, but from two different perspectives. And the story takes so many twists and turns that a windy country road would be jealous of how many twists and turns it has. Throughout 30 hours of gameplay that I had, well, 30 to 35 hours of gameplay that I had throughout my first playthrough of this game, it had me guessing for the full 30 hours that I was playing it. Only at the very end was I able to figure it out. And the setting is just so phenomenal. And if you don't play any other game, if you play video games for the story. Now, I know there are people that play them only for the story, which is perfectly fine. I mean, some people play games for gameplay, story, or a mix of all the above like I do. If you only play games for the gameplay, and or for the story, excuse me. If you only play games for the story, and you have not played Yakuza 0, you are doing yourself a massive disservice. You are doing yourself a massive disservice. Go play the game if you haven't already for the story, if you are very much into that kind of thing. Because like I said, you are very much missing out on that. But coming in at number 2 is The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. This story is phenomenal, and the way that you build your character is great. It has deep, expansive character building, and unlike in Skyrim, you do not get to be the master or the leader of the Fighters Guild, the Mages Guild, the Thieves Guild, the Dark Brotherhood. I don't know if the Dark Brotherhood was even in Morrowind. I think it was only introduced in Oblivion. But anyway, you don't get to be the leader of House Telvanni and House Halalu and all those other houses. And so there's that. And the fact that you start out as a nobody and have to prove yourself instead of Skyrim, for example. Everybody's like, oh my god, it's the Dragonborn. We love you, even though it's been like 5 minutes of gameplay for you. No, you have to prove yourself. People are doubting you until the very end, right until you prove yourself as the Horator and the Nerevarine. I might be mispronouncing Horator. Horator? No, Horator. I might be mispronouncing that, I might not be. The Horator and the Nerevarine, as you need to prove yourself to the 3 houses and 3 tribes, and they need to name you all of that in order to have you lead and be able to take down Dagoth-Ur. And so you definitely have to prove yourself, but people are doubting you throughout the whole game. And that realistically makes sense. And then, well, let me say one more thing about Morrowind. I don't mind the combat. I like the combat. Is it perfect? No, it is not perfect. But it does make sense if you are not very skilled at using an axe, that if you try to use an axe, you won't be very good at it. But if you have an axe skill of, say, 70 or 80, you will be pretty good at using it. That makes a lot of sense. People seem to hate the fact that you have to be skilled in order to use the weapon that you're using. And I think that's ridiculous. I think that you should get better at using the weapon, well, your character, as you level up that skill. I think that should be the case. And in Morrowind, that is the case. And now, moving on to my favorite game of all time. Doom Eternal is still my favorite game of all time, and I don't know what will pass it. I really don't know. I mean, this is obvious, but I have yet to complete a game that is better. I've yet to complete a game that I have enjoyed more than Doom Eternal. It has so much enemy variety. The Marauder is not this stupidly ridiculous boss that some people perceive it to be. And it feels like it's practically the perfect length, and there are so many different ways to kill your enemies besides just using guns. You have a flame bilge. You have a grapple hook that you can use. You can shoot and throw grenades at the same time. You can glory kill, just like in 2016. You can use a chainsaw, like in 2016. But it is more encouraged to use the chainsaw in Doom Eternal, because you are kind of limited on your ammo, due to the fact that you can kill enemies in so many different ways. And the story is decent, but it's Doom. What do you expect? A Yakuza-like story? No. No. I mean, John Romero is not making Doom anymore, but one time John Romero said that a video game story is like a story in a porn movie. It is unnecessary, or something like that, to paraphrase. So, Doom has never been known for its story. It has been known for its gameplay. But it has a pretty decent, if not good, story if you actually take the time to read all the lore pages that you get, or all the pages that you get throughout the game, and all the stuff that you can read over the course of the campaign. And yeah, that rounds out my list. Tell me what your top 25 is I am very interested to know what your top 25 is. Also, I do want to say that I have beaten all of these games at least once from start to finish. Because there have been endings like Far Cry 5 that were terrible. Well, that is the only anomaly that sticks out in my mind. But the ending of Far Cry 5 was not that great. And there are certain endings that, like I said, it's like no final boss, and not as good. But I don't rate my games until I fully complete them. And the credits start rolling on the game. But yeah, tell me what your favorite game or favorite games are down below in the comments. I'm very interested to know how your list differs from mine. And so yes, guys, I do believe that will do it for this storytime video. And until the next storytime video, I will see you later. Goodbye, guys! Thank you all for watching, and